Hey guys, it's Bill Vinci and Ryan Vinci here from No Time for Nonsense. It's Sunday. You know what that means. Another podcast with us today with special guest, former goalie NHLer Martin Biron. Marty, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. I see you got your Sabres gear on. I'm in the Sabres locker room, but I got my Quebec Nordic sweatshirt on.
That's an old school hoodie right there.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Quebec City, right? So these are that's the team really that got me loving hockey. I grew up in the early 80s with the Stasny brothers and the Michel Bergeron coaching that team, hating the Montreal Canadiens. So that all put it together. So that's, I just pulled it out for today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the background, by the way, being in the Sabres. That's just a cool shot.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a picture in the Sabres locker room. I don't know that if I can see it in the background, but I'll find it. I know I've got it somewhere out there.
Okay. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for joining us today. I know it's a beautiful day out, at least here in upstate New York, and we had to get you in for an hour, but I appreciate you coming on. Ryan, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing excellent. Sun's shining, got some work done, and now I'm ready to do some talking.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So first, I want to thank our sponsors for today's show. Always a big part of the No Time for Nonsense show. So I want to reach out and thank Joey's at 307. You got to go down, man. You're looking for a great dinner, catering. This guy does a little downtown Utica, right on Mohawk Street at 307. You can give Matt a call at 315-864-3527. Joey's at 307. Also want to thank Geddes Bakery in North Syracuse. John, Pete, and Michelle, fantastic family, do a lot for the community. They have some of the best area baked goods, Greek, Italian. They got a little bit of everything. Contact them at 315-437-8084. Also, Bossone Sausage in downtown Utica, a hot spot on Sundays and weekends, man. Get your pizza free, get your sausage, get all your goods there, man. They got everything fresh, made daily there. Great people. Contact them at 315-765-6409. Also, Capri Pizza in Oriskany, John Randazzo, another fantastic guy, does a lot for the community. He's always got pizzas at the basketball games, always got pizzas down at the Little League fields. You can get food from them at any time. He's got some of the best stuff around. Reach out to John at 315-768-1111. And our final one is Premier Landscape. I want to thank Mike and Austin Smith, some of the best landscaping, lawn service, pruning, and even plowing in the winter. You want to give them a call. They're fantastic, good people. You can reach out to them at 315-534-8246. So thanks again for our sponsor for today's show. But, Marty, growing up in Quebec, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, obviously, Canada is obviously huge for hockey. So tell us a little about you growing up in hockey in Quebec.
Well, Quebec City is I don't want to say it's a small town. It's about the size of Buffalo, New York, where I am now. Roughly with the suburb, 1 million people. The old part of the city, the downtown, is very historical, very touristic attraction because it was, the first city founded in North America, and inside the walls, it has stayed the same for 400 plus years. So it's really cool to go to, but I didn't appreciate it until I visited back after leaving. It's like living in Buffalo and never going to Niagara Falls, and then people come from all over the world to see that. So anyway, so I grew up, about 30 minutes outside the city. My dad was a construction worker. My mom worked at the bank and then took some time off, obviously, when my brother and I were growing up, went back to work after that. But we were a very active family. We did cross-country skiing in the winter. We did alpine skiing in the winter. Obviously, my dad froze the backyard, so we skated a lot on the backyard ice rink. In the summertime, baseball, soccer. It was, just very active. We invented games. We would find rackets, we'd find whatever we had, and we'd invent a game with my friends and, people on the street. So it was great. It was a great area to grow up. It was a very family-friendly area to grow up in. And so my brother and I, he's 3 years younger than me, but we both, grew up playing a ton of sports and developing our athletic abilities that way.
You know what, it's funny that you say that, how you would pick up, and that's what we did growing up in the 70s and 80s too, is whatever you got your hands on. You went from playing maybe screen ball in the morning, flag football in the afternoon, street hockey at night. You just did everything. Today, a lot of kids just focus on one sport only. And it's such a shame, because you really need to play more than one sport to kind of just – I mean, there's so much involved in that, in playing different sports.
Yeah, times have changed. It's obviously, not the same thing as growing up in the 80s. And I used to leave with my backpack and my bike in the morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, and wouldn't come back until 5, 6 o'clock at night. And my parents didn't worry about where I was. Now, if I send all my kids for 6, 7, 8 hours, I'd be texting them and calling them and tracking their phones and making sure I know where they are. Right.
Right.
So it was obviously very different. But I do like the mentality of developing yourself, especially at a younger age. If you're 14 and under, do as many sports as you can.
Sure.
Play summer sports, play lacrosse, play soccer, play golf, tennis, baseball, whatever. In the winter, if you're a hockey player, play hockey. But if you play football or whatever, don't just focus on one sport. I understand that there is a part of it that you have to choose which sport is probably the priority, and focus a lot on that.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to develop into an all-around great athlete is what makes the Connor McDavid and the Sidney Crosby and the Jack Eichel so good. At some point, you develop more into one sport when you're 15, 16 years old. I get that, but when you're young, do as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you played a lot of junior hockey, obviously, and tell us a little bit about that. What kind of competition did you have playing that?
Oh, funny enough, when I grew up in Quebec City, I wasn't the top goaltender in the area. So the way youth hockey worked, it was more the region based. So my region, I played on my team, and then there was about 5 or 6 other regions in Quebec City. And when I got to be midget age for my major midget year, I actually didn't really make the team in my area. So they had an expansion draft, basically. There was a team about 8 hours away from Quebec City that their region wasn't as populated as Quebec City was. So the team that I was trying out for was allowed to protect 1 goalie, 4 defensemen, and 8 forwards or whatnot. And then that team would come in and select some players. So I ended up having to leave at 16 years old to be able to go play midget hockey, which was, you hear of stories of how, they were always the best player on their team, the best player in the area.
Right.
I wasn't. I was there. I was up there with some of the best, but I wasn't number one, so I worked really hard. And that year, midget, I was able to develop. And then I got drafted in juniors in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. But again, when I first came to juniors at 17, I wasn't the starting goalie. I had to wait and bide my time and work hard. And then, something opened up and I went right in and took my opportunity. So it was not one of those where you dominated throughout your whole youth and you're a silver spooner and,
Right.
I worked at every level. I worked in juniors.
Right.
I worked in the American League when I played for Rochester. And then I got to the NHL and I still had to work to try to stay afloat and not have a young kid push me out of the league.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's part of the good thing too, because you have people that are better than you, that pushes you. So I feel like that's a good thing, just to have the competition that strives you to go further and further. That's
absolutely. And then, not that I'm a guy that plays with a chip on my shoulder or whatnot, but I remember this very vividly. At 15 years old, we did a summer tournament. I never played summer hockey, and some of my buddies played summer hockey all the time. But there was a local tournament, and this guy called me, and he says, do you want to play he goes, we'll probably lose all 3 games, and then we'll be done, but at least we'll just put the equipment on, and, in a month from now, we have our training camp, so you'll have some, time on the ice. And we went in and won the tournament. And it was all there was the top team of guys that played summer all the time. And then there was us, kind of a bunch of misfits, and we played really well and won, right? So I remember thinking, not that I have a chip on my shoulder, but if we can beat that team, it's going to make it so much more sweet.
Absolutely.
And it did. And at that time, I think my mind realized very quickly that, the soccer and and the baseball and all the other sports I was playing helped me develop myself even more than if I just stuck to hockey.
Absolutely. Hey,
the
guys,
versatility definitely helps.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we're with Martin Biron, goalie, NHL player, been around for a long time, a fan favorite in Buffalo. If you have any questions for Marty, send a message, and we'll be watching our screen over here. And if you have any questions, we'll relay them over, and we'll get an answer for you. So, Ryan, I know you got something for him.
Yeah, I want to know, like, who are the players that you grew up and inspired you when you were watching them? Who are some of the people you liked watching?
You know what? Everybody says that if you're a goalie and grew up in the province of Quebec in, the late 80s, early 90s, you have to be a Patrick Roy fan, right? Because he won the Cup with Montreal in 86, won the Cup with Montreal in 93, moved on to Colorado, but still, like those 6, 7, 8 years, he was the man. For me, it was the opposite. I hated him because he was playing for the enemy, right? So when Montreal beat Quebec in 93 in the playoffs, I was devastated. I did not want Patrick to go on and have any success. So I got to know him a little bit. I played against him, and he's actually from Quebec City himself as well. So I respect him, and I truly enjoy what he's done for goaltenders and the butterfly position and all of that. But I didn't really look up to Patrick Roy and said, I have to become like him.
Right.
For me, I had a few idols and role models that I looked up to in the NHL. One was Peter Stastny, the Stastny brothers. I talked about that earlier, but I got starstruck a few times where I would have had a chance to meet Peter Stastny, and I backed out. I started walking towards him to go and shake his hand, and I would turn around and go the other way. So he was one of them, but the way he carried himself, he came over, he actually fled Czechoslovakia at the time. He grew up in Bratislava, which is now part of Slovakia, and him and his two brothers ended up defecting to come over to Canada and play for Quebec, but he didn't speak much English, didn't speak any French, learned English, learned French, so he could communicate with fans. I thought that was important. That was important for a French-speaking town to have somebody come in and want to be a great role model. So he was one of them, obviously. And then a goalie that I usually tell most people that I watched a ton when I was a kid was Mike Liut with the Hartford Whalers. So my dad worked for a construction company, and his company had season tickets. Well, the bosses would get the Montreal game and the Boston Bruins game and the Flyers and the Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Chicago Blackhawks. And the only tickets left for my dad to basically get was the Hartford Whalers. Nobody wanted to go see the Hartford Whalers. So he would take me and my brother, and we would go down behind the Hartford net in warm-up, and I would watch Mike Liut in warm-up. He was a big, tall goalie. He was really good. I played with Washington and St. Louis before that. So he was one that, if I could see highlights of the Hartford Whalers, or if I could go to a game, I was focusing in on Mike Liut, and he was exceptional.
Awesome. A buddy of mine, Bob Taylor, just said, Grant, what about Grant Fuhr?
Well, Grant Fuhr, see, the thing is he was really big in the early 80s when the, Oilers started winning all these cups, right? So the Oilers won, what was it? 81, 82, 83, 84. Then they had the Steve Smith own goal in 85 or 86. Maybe it was around that time anyway. Actually the Islanders won 80, 81, 82, 83. And then the Edmonton Oilers came in after that. But they were a Western team. The Edmonton Oilers, their game, if they were on hockey night in Canada, was at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
A 7, 8, 9-year-old in me didn't stay up to watch the late games.
Right.
But I knew of Grant Fuhr. And really, one of the most memorable moments that affected me growing up was in 1987. So the All-Star game in 1987 didn't exist. Well, it existed before, but they did something different. It was in Quebec City, and they called it Rendezvous 87, where the Soviets came in to play a 2-game series against the NHL All-Star.
Yeah.
And Grant Fuhr played. And I remember I did not get a chance to have tickets to go. I mean, there was only 15,000 seats in that little Coliseum, and it was going to be packed. But I watched the games. I recorded the games on beta. Like I had a VCR, a beta VCR, right? And I recorded the games and watched it. And Grant Fuhr played both games, and I remember just paying attention to his moves and how he'd react. So yeah, Grant Fuhr was a guy that I knew of, but he wasn't a guy that I got to see live. Like the Edmonton Oilers came into Quebec City, my dad didn't get tickets for that one because everybody wanted to go see Wayne Gretzky.
Sure.
So
yeah,
we couldn't find tickets for that.
Absolutely.
So were you always interested in goalie, or was that something that just developed after playing for a while?
I was always pretty much focused on goaltending. Now, when I started playing hockey when I was young, my parents decided I needed to learn to skate. So I did a year of learn to skate, and then the next year was like learn to skate, but with hockey gear on. And it was kind of a learn to play program. So so by the time I joined maybe the mini mite, like the Timbits kind of hockey program, I was a good skater. So I was zooming around with the puck and I was scoring a ton of goals, but I always liked goaltenders. In the early 80s in Quebec City, they had a guy named Daniel Bouchard who was a really good goalie that I liked. Mario Gosselin was a really good goalie that I liked. And the equipment was changing a little bit. It wasn't just brown pads, brown gloves anymore. Guys got blue pads with red stripes. And, I was like, whoa, this is really cool. So when I grabbed my pen and my coloring book, I drew goaltenders and I gave them crazy equipment. So, yeah, I was drawn to goalies. My brother was 3 years younger than me. So if I was 6, 7 years old, he was only 3 or 4. So he wasn't able to play hockey with me. So I would go down the basement and all it was cement, like a cement basement, not finished. And I would shoot racket balls against the wall with a stick and then I'd make save, right? I'd stand about 5, 6 feet away and I'd shoot it against myself and I'd be down there for hours and just do that, So yeah, I was always kind of focusing on goaltenders, but I played up as a forward, as a winger for a good 2, 3, 4 years before I made the transition to goalie.
Wow, that's awesome. And then obviously being drafted first round, 16th overall pick by the Sabres. What were your emotions getting drafted by Buffalo? What was going through your head?
Well, I'll tell you this. The year before, when I got drafted in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, I was 150 times more nervous. I was sitting in the stands in Chicoutimi, and that's where the draft was. And then the Beauport team came up, and they said, we're drafting, and they said my name, and I was like shaking. I had to shake. My legs were not controllable. I got up. I don't remember. I completely blacked out. It's like whatever happened. The NHL draft, I was a little bit more calm. I had gone through something like that before. And, these are a lot of people's you don't know. Like at the junior drafts, you're with all your buddies, the coaches, the players you all know. At the NHL level, it's like Buffalo. I don't know who's on Buffalo. Like their GMs, and I know who they are, but I've never met them. I wasn't nervous. And so when I was about getting close to getting drafted, my agent was there, my parents were there, and we would pay attention to where the cameras would go. If the cameras would come near us, we're like, oh, there's a chance. But if they go to the other side of the building, like, well, they're picking somebody over there.
Right.
So, but I never got really nervous. I remember I got drafted. I went on stage. I was with John Muckler and Don Luce. I put my hat on, waved to the fans, and that was great. It was like, okay, like, I'm going to make the NHL next year. That's what I kept thinking. That was your goal. And wasn't going to happen, but still, like, that was what I was thinking. I was a little cocky confident.
So when you made your debut with the Sabres, you were the 4th youngest goalie to play.
Yeah.
How were you nervous there?
Again, like it happened all so fast. So I'm 18 years old. I'm playing my 2nd year in juniors, and we get to the middle of December, and what happens at every year in the middle of December is they're like Team Canada, Team USA, all over the world. They have their training camp for the World Juniors. So I went to New Brunswick for our training camp for the World Juniors Team Canada that year. And I was one of the last 4 guys cut. So on December 22nd, I believe it was, we got a call at like 5:30 in the morning in our hotel room. I had to go down and meet the coaches, and it was me, Jay McKee, Danny Briere, and Daniel Cleary. We were the last 4 cut that year. So we're told we have a flight out. So I flew back to Quebec City, and it's the Christmas break for juniors. So I'm disappointed. I did not make Team Canada, and that was a big goal of mine that year to do it. So I'm disappointed. Getting ready to go to my grandma's house for Christmas Eve, and I get a call from Larry Carriere, and he's like, "Hey, Marty, we need you in Pittsburgh tomorrow. We've got too many injuries, and we need you to come up." So I'm like, okay, like everything's happening so fast again.
Yeah.
So on Christmas Day, I fly to Pittsburgh. The next day, I got the morning skate. All of it happened. I get to the game, and I'm playing against Mario Lemieux and Jaromir Jagr and the Pittsburgh Penguins of 1995, right? So I didn't really have time to be nervous.
Yeah.
I know I had a little, like, pinch me, am I dreaming moment in warm-up when I'm stretching by the wall there, and I'm, like, stretching my legs. And every single one of the Penguins players jumped on the ice and skated in front of me. Well, Mario Lemieux was always the last one out of the locker room. And you could tell, like, if he was playing, he was coming the last one. And if Jagr stepped on the ice and nobody was behind him, then Mario wasn't playing. Maybe he had the bad back or something. And Jagr steps on the ice, and then all of a sudden there's a pause, right? In my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe Mario's not playing. Maybe he had too much turkey at Christmas or something, or ham or whatever. And then all of a sudden the crowd roars, and Mario steps on the ice. He taps my pad, and he says, "Good luck, kid," as he goes by me. And I'm like, okay, somebody please pinch me. Like, I'm on the ice with Mario Lemieux right now. So that was maybe that one moment. But I can't say that I was really nervous. I didn't really know what I was doing out there.
Right. We got a question for you. Brad Burke. Hello, guys. Good to see you all. Welcome, Marty. Who was your favorite goalie and player to compete and your worst? And Ray says, Ryan, good to see you, and thank you for your service during this difficult time. It's very appreciated.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ryan, are you a frontline worker with so we just met today, so I figured if he says that, so.
Yeah, firefighter, paramedic.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for what you do. My brother's also now, after he played 300 games, I think, in the National Hockey League, and after retired, he went into straight away, finished his degree in college, went to firefighting school, and he's now been a firefighter, 7 years in Quebec City.
Wow.
So thank you. I know it's not an easy job, and you guys are, obviously putting the front line a lot. So thanks. I echoed those sentiments. Yeah. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Worst player to play against, by far, Danny Briere was one. And I was so happy when he came to Buffalo because
I was going to say, yeah.
But I faced him in midget and juniors in the American League and in the National Hockey League, and he would always score on me. He was one of the worst. And then the other two, Daniel Alfredson, because we played Ottawa so damn much. It was every time the Ottawa Senators, so he was tough. And Jaromir Jagr, I could never figure him out. And so I guess there's a couple of Hall of Famers in there.
Sure.
So I'm not too bad, right? It wasn't just me.
No.
And then worst goalie to play against, I don't know. I never really paid attention to the goalies. Like I hated playing against the New Jersey Devils because I never did well. But I never associated that with Marty Brodeur. I never said, I can't beat Marty. I just could never figure out the Devils. I hated playing at the old Continental Airlines Arena in the Meadowlands. There was 500 people in the stands. The building smelled. It was just awful, right? So I hated playing there, and I never really had much success there. But it wasn't Marty Brodeur so much as it was the team. I had a bad feeling against them.
Yeah.
So I didn't like them. The team that I loved playing against the most, and if you go on Hockey Reference and do my stats and against teams, the Anaheim Ducks. I could never lose against the Anaheim Ducks. And I shutout after shutout, and I beat them every time in Anaheim at home. It didn't matter.
Even with Correa, huh? Paul Correa.
Yeah. Even when they had the good team, the team that, won the cup in 06-07, like I would, Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaff, J.S. Jaguar in that, I would beat them all the time. Just love playing them. And I think the reason for that is, so there's two really big goalie gurus in the National Hockey League, and they're brothers, François Allaire and Benoit Allaire. They're from Montreal. Francois was the one that started with Patrick Roy in Montreal that developed the butterfly. Benoit Allaire came in after and then went to Phoenix and worked with Nikolai Habibulin and Sean Burke and has been the goalie coach for the New York Rangers ever since Henrik Lundqvist has been there, and we all know what happened.
Yeah.
So, but Francois was the goalie coach in Anaheim, and I worked with Frank in the summer. So every time I went to play Anaheim, I was like, I want to show him like what I got. Like he's my personal goalie coach, but he works for a different team, and I want to show him what I got. So I played with a little bit more oomph, right? A little bit more energy, and I did so well against Anaheim every time.
Yeah, that was your team.
That was my team.
You know what? It's same with like even in sports, baseball. When a pitcher, no matter who they're playing, whenever they play a certain team, the team just can't hit them. No matter how good they are, sometimes you just got their number. And
sometimes it's the building too. Like I remember playing the Madison Square Garden, and I loved it because it was dark and the sounds were awful. I loved playing there. Loved playing in Montreal because I knew my family and friends were there, but the music in Montreal, so they'd play like organs or whatever, but then they'd play French Canadian music throughout the game, and I'd be like dancing in my crease, like this is great. So for me, it was fun to play in Montreal. For some other guys, they'd be like, "What the heck is going on with this music right now?"
Think you're in a circus or something.
Exactly. So there's places like that just give you a better feeling, right?
Right. So I want to hear about your time in Buffalo. Obviously, you were a fan favorite in Buffalo, and we, as Buffalo fans, and my son grew up, obviously, I had the Sabres on all the time in the winter, so he had to grow up being a Sabres fan, but we loved watching, and there's nothing better when the Sabres are winning in Buffalo.
You're absolutely right. When the Sabres are winning, it seems like, or the Bills are winning, it seems like the community, Western New York, all the way down Syracuse, Utica. If you're a Sabres fan, a Bills fan, it just makes everything so much better. But I think it's funny because I came in after Dominic Hasek. So I played a couple of years with Hasek, and I came in, and so people were like, oh, my goodness, like we just lost a Hall of Fame goalie that won MVP and Vezina trophies, and now we got this young kid, and what the heck is going on? So, and then we had ownership issues. We went through bankruptcy. We were saved by Mr. Golisano. And by the time we came back out of the lockout in 04-05 for the 05-06 season, where I thought, okay, I'm 27 years old, 28 years old. I'm entering my best years, and I worked so hard to get here. There's a young kid by the name of Ryan Miller that was like coming out of Michigan State and Rochester and did so well. So it's funny how, in hindsight, now people looking back at my career, they're like, oh, Marty, you were so great here in Buffalo. You're such a fan favorite. But I never really had much success. I never made it to the playoffs on my own with the Buffalo Sabres. We struggled ownership. We struggled with players. It was kind of a rebuilding time. Now, two things. One, I think the Ottawa Brawl, my last game at home, helped me leave on a good note because people are like, yes, that's what I remember most. And the fact that I returned to Buffalo after I played, and I'm out in the community, and I have young kids that are out in school. And so I think it kind of maybe helped bringing my stature to a different level. I think people – if I say, okay, let's go back and watch this game together, you're going to be screaming at the TV because you're going to be like, what the heck is Marty doing? Why is he going to the corners? He let in a bad goal. And we've seen some classic games now on MSG here in Buffalo over the last few weeks, and a few of them I was in, and I'm like, what am I doing?
What am I doing?
I'm like, but I think that the circumstances made it that people remember special games that I was in, and it really stands out.
Yeah, absolutely. We got another question here from Bobby Taylor. Best player today is Connor McDavid. Do you guys agree?
Yes, absolutely. He's the best player. He will be the best player for 7, 8, 9 years. Now, there's a closer gap because you look at the Jack Eichel, Austin Matthews, David Pasternak. You've got so many really great young players in the National Hockey League. Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane, these guys are still fantastic. Leon Draisaitl is spectacular. But I've never seen a player skate that fast, move that quick, be able to stick handle that quick. The hockey sense, everything that comes with Connor McDavid is fantastic. And I was lucky enough to see it when Connor was 17 years old. I worked for a half a season, the second half of a season, with the Erie Otters as their goalie coach. And that's when Connor McDavid was playing in the OHL in the Ontario Hockey League juniors. And I got to see him on the ice as a 17-year-old. And I'm like, he is better than 95% of the players in the National Hockey League, and he was only 17.
Wow.
I mean, he's that good. And, you know, so if you guys ever want to see something special and you catch him in practice, like the games are great, but watch him in practice, he's phenomenal.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you know what I got to ask you? There's a question here. Now I'm going to bring off 5 Buffalo Sabre players. You say the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear their name.
Okay.
All right. Maxim Afinogenov.
Well, I'm going to keep it for a good audience, right? So Max, first thing that comes to mind, like flashy. He was flashy. He had the hair flying back there, the jersey tucked in on one side. He can fly. But as we talk a lot on our show, The Instigators, and Andrew Peters used to play cards with Maxie on the plane, and Maxie would be like, I raise you 100. He was always raising the pot. I raise you. So he was flashing cards. He was flashy wherever he went. I let him borrow my car one day. He wanted to drive my sports car at the time. And I said, okay, just go around the rink. He took it on the highway by the arena downtown, the 190, and I saw him zoom right by me, and I was like, oh, no, like, what is he doing? So, yeah, Maxie was flashy.
Flashy. All right. What about Rob Ray?
Tough.
Razor.
Tough as nail, man, and scary. And scary to the young guys coming in. When you came in the locker room and you were a rookie and you see number 32 Rob Ray over there, he was scary. We had a game in Pittsburgh one day, and you know, I'm getting the start, and we're getting dressed before the game, and Razor starts his mouth and goes, "Oh, Marty, I remember your first game in this building. You were 18 years old. You got lit up like a Christmas tree. This is like, it's probably going to happen again. Like, that team chews you out every time you play here." He's just building my character, right? He's like taking shots at me. And I turn around and I'm like, I'm not going to let him get away with it. So I turn around, I'm like, well, Razor, you'll have a pretty good look from the press box. You know, you haven't played in 20 games. What are you telling me? I'm going to cut your suit in a million pieces. You're going to go home in your underwear, I tell you. Well, sure enough, I got pulled halfway in the first period, giving up 3 goals. And I was in the locker room looking at my clothes, like, are they ripped? Like, what did you do? So yeah, Razor was scary.
He was so scary. Funny. What about Miroslav Satan?
Quiet.
Yeah.
He was very quiet, smart as hell. Man, he was a smart man, very quiet. But underneath the surface, things were boiling. Like, he wanted to score goals. You could see him in his goal celebration. Like, he had that fire, but he was a quiet man. And funny enough, he never sweated. Like, his hair was always dry at the end of the game. He'd be like, dude, you just played 25 minutes. Like,
right.
Sweat. Not a bead of sweat on him. It was really funny.
That's cool. That's awesome. What about JP Dumont?
JP, goal scorer, sniper.
Yeah.
I mean, I played against him in juniors, and man, JP Dumont in juniors was an absolute snipe show. He was scoring. He beat Guy Lafleur's playoff record in goals one year because he scored more goals than Guy Lafleur had, and that was a record in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. And I think it's been beaten since then, but that was JP. He was if you gave him 10 shots in the slot, he'd find a way to score more than the average guys, that's for sure.
That's awesome. And last one, obviously the Dominator, Hasek. Crazy, but a positive crazy, I would say. He,
just revolutionized the position in the way that he dropped his stick and picked up the puck. But nobody would do that in the past because you would get slashed on your fingers, and he didn't care. He was like, I'm grabbing the puck, get out of here. He'd lay down, make saves with his head. Like most goalies would duck out of the way, he'd make saves with his head. But when I realized he was really, truly crazy, we were getting ready to play a game one day, and, you know, we're in the locker room, like in one of those stalls. The room was different, but still. He gets up to go for warm-up, and he's facing his stall, and he grabs his gloves and his helmet, and he puts his helmet on, and then he looks, and his jock protector is still in his stall. And he goes, Marty, I forgot jock. And I'm like, Dom, go out there for warm-up without it? And he's yelling, Rip. So Rip Simonik is our equipment manager. He goes, Rip, forgot jock. So Rip got a pair of socks, like game socks, player socks, and they stuffed them in his pants to go for warm-up. I'm thinking in warm-up he's just going to stand there and just like basically like not try to get hit.
Right.
Trying to make every save. He's laying down. I'm like, dude, you got to get hit.
Oh, my God.
It's not going to feel good. So then he came back after warm-up, got dressed, undressed, dressed back up. Everything was fine. But I'm like, he's literally crazy. I would never have expected that.
That's
now, from my understanding, you had the number 00.
Yes.
What happened to that?
Well, when I played that year that I went away, 8 hours away in midget, the numbers for the team were already preset, and they were high numbers and they were weird numbers. So the goalie numbers were 00, 30, or 33. Those were the 3 goalie jerseys that they have. And the other guy I was with, he wanted 30, and he took that number. I never would have worn 33 because that was Patrick Roy's number, and there's no way I was going to wear 33. I hated them. So I'm like, okay, I'll take 00. And I had a great year. I won goalie of the year that year, first team all-star in the midget. So I had a great season. So I carried it through juniors, and I had great success in juniors. I was lucky enough to wear it with the Buffalo Sabres when I got called up at 18. And then, getting close to the year 2000 and everybody having to worry about the Y2K bug and all of that computer stuff. They had a computer program that ran for the insurance and the pension. And when they put my number in 00, it didn't register. So they didn't have really the resources to just change the program. They just said, okay, well, that number can't be allowed anymore. We'll do 1 through 99. And when Wayne retired, it was 1 through 98. So I ended up having to change number. But I still wish I would have been able to keep that number wherever I would have gone. But, hey, 43 was really good to me. And, that was fine as well.
No, that's awesome. So, you know what? Now, after you obviously got traded, which we were, obviously I know Ryan Miller came up. You got traded. You went to Philly. You played with the Rangers. You played with the Islanders. But you had a great run with Philly, though. I mean. We
did. My first year in Philly was the year before when I got traded to the Flyers, I finished the season there. We finished 30th overall. We were last. But it was cool because we were going to pick first overall at the draft, right? Well, not so fast. We lost the lottery, so the Chicago Blackhawks got to pick first, and they picked Patrick Kane. That would have been really cool if Patrick Kane would have played with us in Philly. But they went on the free agency and acquired Danny Briere. They got Kimmo Timonen.
Yep.
They got Scott Hartnell. They got a few other guys. So we had a really good team. But it took us a little while to get going. We lost 10 games in a row in the month of February. So we were first in our division, and before you know it, we're out of a playoff spot. We battled our way back in. But for the first time now in my career, I got to play and start in the playoffs. So first round, we played Washington. We beat them in 7 games, overtime game 7.
Yep.
What an experience that was against Ovechkin. And remember Ovechkin of 07, 08? He was scoring 50 a year, and he was just so good. He's still so good, but so that was really cool. Then we played the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
Beat them in 5 games.
Yeah.
Seriously. I probably had that sweatshirt with me everywhere I went just to rub it in their face, right? And then we ended up losing to Sydney and the Pittsburgh Penguins. But, man, that year was one of my best hockey season. It was so much fun. I still have so many friends from that 07-08 season, and it was great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now, after you got out of hockey, now you're working with the Sabres. You're with the your studio analyst with Buffalo now and stuff. And how's that?
It's fun. So, a few times throughout my career, when I was still playing, I was asked to do some media work. That year that we finished last with the Flyers, we didn't make the playoffs. TSN in Toronto in Canada, that's the big sports network. They basically asked if I could come in and do some studio work. They wanted a player, somebody that, could go on TV, whatnot. So I went, and they enjoyed my work, and I enjoyed doing it. So if I was out of the playoffs early, or if I didn't make the playoffs, then they would ask me again. When I was with the Rangers, because I was the backup to Lundqvist, I did some web, some of the Rangers.com, content, and they used to call it Bronze Journal. And, I would have the guy from the website come with me on the road, and we would walk down the street, we'd interview players. So we did a lot of those things, and I really enjoyed it. But being a backup your last few years, you only play 15, 20 games a year. So you had a lot of time to think about, hey, what am I going to do when I'm done, right?
Right.
And so I had a chance to have worked with some of the best people in the business, especially when I was in New York. You got Joe Micheletti that was there. Sam Rosen was the play-by-play. Kenny Alberts was the radio play-by-play. There were so many of them that were there, and I would Dave Maloney, I would talk to those guys every day, and we would argue stuff hockey. We would share expertise. So I'm like, that's what I want to do. So when I retired, luckily enough, the phone rang right away. It was people that wanted me to join their network to be able to do some hockey coverage. So I did some stuff in Toronto, some stuff in New York, a little everywhere. But not until 3 years ago that the Sabres called and were like, we want you to do some stuff for us, which I was extremely happy about and excited about, because the Sabres are my first love, really. They drafted me, and I was living here, so that was great. But, with NHL Network, I covered 2 Stanley Cup finals. Sure. I covered 1 All-Star game, I believe. So I did some really cool stuff and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then in 2018, you also got inducted to the Hall of Fame from the Rochester Americans.
And that was so cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
I played the better part of 2.5 years in Rochester. And my second year with the Rochester Americans, we lost to the Providence Bruins in the Calder Cup finals. But again, that was one of those seasons where you're like, wow, that's the season. Like, that was so good, right? So I truly give most of the credit for my career to Jody Gage and Brian McCutcheon, who is our coach there in Rochester, and everybody with the Rochester Americans organization, because without them, out of juniors, my career was going down. Like, my first year in Rochester, I didn't play well, and I went to the East Coast League, and then all of a sudden it took off. They gave me the chance to get my career back and work through it. And so that allowed me to play 14, 15 years in the National Hockey League and really have an amazing career. So, I got to give credit to the Amherst. And when I got inducted in their Hall of Fame, I got very emotional. I'm doing my speech, and my parents are there, and I've got friends and family and my kids, and I'm doing my speech, and I'm emotional because that is such a fantastic recognition that I never thought would even be possible. So, the American League is amazing. It's amazing. It develops you as a young adult, as a young professional, and Rochester did an amazing job with that.
No, that's cool. I also want to know a little bit more about Hasek. How was he to work behind? Was he a good mentor with you? And
he was great.
Was he kind of just, he was?
He was great. Now, the thing with Dom is you have to earn his trust, and vice versa. So you first come in, and he's kind of like going to be okay. But once you make that connection, he's great. And, my first year in Buffalo, I came up from Rochester, and Dom got hurt, and he missed 2 months. Yep. So I was sitting in Dominic Hasek's stall. because you have Dwayne Rollison who has his stall, and then Dom is not there, and there was only 2 goalie stalls in the locker room. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting in Dominic Hasek's stall. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's pictures on the wall like Hasek and his kids or whatever. And I left them there. I'm like, I'm not touching his stuff.
Right.
The big thing with Dominic Hasek, he used to have 2 nail clippers, a small one and a big one. They would be Velcro on the side of the wall. And on top of it, it says, don't ever touch these. Like, Dom would sit there in between periods and would be like clipping his nails. Like, he'd just be like, clip. And I think I left them there. I never touched them, left them there. I don't know if I earned his trust at that moment because I left his stuff where it needed to be, and that was his stall. I was just borrowing the seat for, a few weeks.
Right.
But as soon as he came back, and then the next year we played together 1 full season, and I was with him, and, you know, we would be, you know, grabbing dinner on the road or whatnot. He was awesome. And now – he's amazing. When he comes back, I've never seen, like, people will have stories and they say, oh, I asked Hasek for an autograph in 1998 and he didn't sign it, right? So Dom was a little different like that. Sometimes he would say no. Sometimes he didn't understand what was going on. You know, when he switched from Bauer gear to Louisville gear, Louisville people said, we don't want you to sign any Bauer equipment. Well, if there was a picture that had Bauer on it, he didn't really want to sign it. And he was like, no, I'm not with these guys anymore. And so it's really weird. Now he comes back. He's taking selfies with fans. He's enjoying the crowd. He's signing autographs. He's coming on the pregame show or in the intermission. He's doing interviews on the Instigators. He's like this new guy. Like, he's completely changed. And I think that is because when he played, he focused on playing. That was his bubble. Sure. And now that he's not playing anymore, you can kind of realize, like, hey, there's another side of it, and he's excellent with it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. We do got another question. Somebody want to know if you ever got in a fight in a game.
Yes, and if you want to Google it, it's on YouTube. That famous Sabres Ottawa Brawl of 2007. So, yeah, I always thought I was going to get in a fight and was going to get a win. I saw Felix Potvin beat up on Ron Extall one year, and I'm like, Felix Potvin is 5'11", 165 pounds, and Ron Extall is this crazy guy that goes after players and two-hand them across the head, right? And Felix beat up on Ron, and I was like, that's going to be me one day. I'm going to catch somebody by surprise. I'm going to get it. I never really got in. I got into a couple of, wrestling matches, like a fight. Right. Until that day against Ottawa. And in the second period, I'm at the far end, the Zamboni end of the arena. And Chris Drury gets hit by Chris Neal in the Ottawa zone. And I saw the whole play happen. And it was a dirty, cheap elbow to the head. And our captain, our co-captain, Chris Drury, is laying on the ice. And he's got a concussion. And he's, not unconscious, but he's struggling. Mm-hmm. So now we all know, what hit the fan, and we're coming out, right? So Lindy Ruff puts Adam Mayer, Andrew Peters, and Pat Kaleta on the ice. It's Pat Kaleta's first NHL game, and it's basically go time. I'm at the other end, 200 feet away from Ray Emery, and I've got my glove loosened up, and I'm like ready to go. Puck drops, everybody's swinging. It's like sword fighting, whatever. And I start skating to the center of the ice, and Ray came across. But Ray Emery was a Gold Glove boxer. Guy weighed 230 pounds and was like 6'3". I was 6'2", 170 pounds. Like, he was a monster of a guy. And so I'm like, yes. And he sees me. My head's shaved, so I look like I'm a really tough guy. He takes his mask off. He's got the big afro going. He's got the big smile on. He's like, I am going to kick your butt. So we get in the fight, and he throws a couple. We don't hit each other, really. It looks like I'm getting murdered, but he didn't really hit me. And we fall down to the ice. And then I'm like, let's get back up. Let's go. He goes, okay, round 2. I'm like, yeah. So we go to get back up. He trips. He falls. He gets back up. We're looking at each other, and all of a sudden he looks over, and there's Andrew Peters that's coming over. And he goes, I'm fighting the tough guy. I'm not fighting. I'm fighting. So I'm like standing there like, okay. So anyway, so that was my one and only really fight in the National Hockey League. I was traded the next week to Philly. That was my last game in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's why I think people are like, oh, you know, there's so many people that have said, I was at that game. I was at that game. Literally, the building old 18,000 people. I think I've met 25,000 people that said they were at that
game.
Because everybody's like to think that they were at the game. I don't know if everybody was at the game.
Right.
But it's one of those days where people remember the game, remember the fight. I got kicked out of the game. I went into the locker room, ate chicken wings and pizza for the rest of the game, and it was glorious. It was fantastic.
That's awesome. Right, I know one of your favorite questions to ask somebody is about the pregame stuff.
Oh yeah, do you have anything that you do that's like a ritual before a game, whether it's a meal or a song or just something that you think about or do?
I had a lot of superstitions when I played. If I won a game, I kept my stick for the next game. A lot of players like to get a new stick every game, but if I won, I kept the same stick. I just retaped the blade, retaped the handle where my hand would meet the paddle, and I kept the stick. Now, when I won 13 straight start in the 05-06 season while Ryan Miller was injured, I used the same stick. By the end of that streak, so you're talking like a month long, you use the same stick every game. That thing is like starting to chip away. It's so bad. I have fiberglass tape wrapped around the handle, the stick, to keep it pieced together. With about 2 minutes left in the game, there's a Pittsburgh player that fell on my stick, and the stick went, we're up by a goal, and my stick snapped in half. Jay McKee looks over to me, goes, Marty, I'll go get you a new stick. I'm like, no, I'm good. It's good. I played the last 2 minutes with a wet noodle in my hand because
Really?
I was like, I'm not changing this stick. Like, this is the reason why we're winning. And then obviously, the stick was broken. So at the end after that game, I put the stick aside and I taped a new stick for the next game and I lost. So figure it out, right? Like it was just sticks. So I had some funny little quirks like this. I'm very much of an OCD, type of guy. So I needed to start getting dressed with 45 minutes left on the clock. At 30 minutes on the clock, I needed to be halfway dressed. At 25 minutes on the clock, I needed to have my jersey on. So there were so many steps that I needed to go, just kind of keep me focused. Yep. The one thing that I did, and I did my whole career, and people still think I'm crazy, is I wore the same skates my whole career. I started my second year junior in 95, 96 with a pair of skates, and I wore those skates until I retired in 2013. I changed the cowling, the plastic, the protection and the blades, but I wore the same boot. Those things were so beat up, so rotten inside out. I needed to tape my ankles with plastic. I used almost a roll of plastic tape on each ankle to keep it sturdy, keep it right there.
Wow.
But I used the same pair of skates my whole career. I have them. They're downstairs in my garage, and they're the same thing.
That's pretty cool. Well, I got to tell you, Marty, we've had a great conversation. We're coming to the end, but now it's the tough part of the show. You're going to be entering the penalty box.
Okay.
And I'm going to.
I never went into the penalty box.
You never went.
You are now.
You are
allowed.
You are now. And I told Rob, I said, this is easy for you. He goes, I spent more time in there. So we're going to ask you. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. Favorite meal.
Chicken parm at Chef's in downtown Buffalo.
Oh, okay. I'm sure you got some good restaurants in Buffalo. We're gonna have to talk about that when we finish the show after this. Yes. Favorite musical band?
I just did Jack Eichel's music bracket, right? He did a rock band bracket.
Did he?
I had the Beatles as the winner at the end. They beat Metallica in the finals, and Metallica was really a 5 seed on one side. So I remember listening to Metallica going to games when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I would say the Beatles just because it's very easy to say. I've got so many bands. I like 80s music. I like 90s music. I like boy band, Britney Spears type. I like all kinds of music. Country. I like them all.
Like it all. Okay. Favorite teammate?
Favorite teammate? I would have to say JP Dumont. Him and I were roommate on the road for 4 years maybe. So he would order the ice cream late at night and he'd always knew what I wanted. And I was in charge of the TV with the remote and we always knew what what show to watch.
Right.
So I would think, I roomed with Danny Briere too for one season, and he was great. But JP and I, we were roommates for like 4 years, and it was awesome.
JP, okay. Favorite hockey moment, most memorable for you?
Most memorable hockey moment. I'd like to say my first NHL game. Mm-hmm. It's not. I'd like to say my first NHL win. It's not. I would say beating the Washington Capitals in Game 7 in overtime. Probably the moment where I can put my body back into that locker room right now after the game and still see everything that's going on. Like it's engraved in my mind. It was awesome.
That game was amazing. Now, last question. This is one of my favorites. If you could sit down and have dinner, have that chicken parm dinner at your favorite restaurant with one person, whether they passed on, they're still around, who would it be and why? And what would you guys, who would that one person you just want to connect with again?
It depends on the day. It depends on the day, right? It depends what I'm talking about. It depends what I'm doing. I think right now as we're talking, the one person that comes to my mind is Jacques Plante. And just because he's the first one to wear a mask. Mm-hmm. And I watch games now and players with a half visor lay in front of shots. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you don't have equipment and those things hurt. And the goalie's full gear, but it still hurts sometimes. Yep. I can't even imagine what it was like to play without a mask.
No.
And I'm saying I'm putting a mask on because I just got 25 stitches and my face is busted. Yep. I'm putting a mask on. I would really like to just say, hey, walk me through it, because I would never have played goal if it wasn't for having a mask on. Like I would not have done it.
No.
So that probably right now, as you catch me, that's the first name that came to my mind.
Okay, that's awesome. I definitely want to thank you so much for coming on the show today, man.
This is great.
This was great, man. We had a great time hearing about your story and everything else. And like I said, during this time when everybody's around and they're home, this is our time to get some of the people like you guys, some of the athletes and stuff, to hear their story. And the parents are home with the kids who are playing sports and coming up, and to hear your stories. This is important to them. And one thing I do want to ask you, what advice would you have before we do our final thing? What advice for kids coming up playing hockey right now would you give them?
My biggest thing is, you got to enjoy it. And I know that at some point, some kids look at it as, I want to play college hockey and that's going to be my scholarship, or that's going to be the way I'm going to make a living. But you can't forget the love of the game. When I retired, so I started the 2013-2014 season, and I knew that was probably going to be my last year. And I went to camp and I was like, oh my God, like I want to go golfing today. And we have practice. Like, like we have a preseason game. I don't really want it. And then, and then it carried into my performance. And then I was like, I'm done. I don't have fun playing the game anymore. I want to do something else in the game, but I don't have fun playing the game anymore. So have fun, because once you start losing the fun, you'll never be able to perform the way you want to perform. And then you're going to come bitter and resentful, and you don't want – that game is such a beautiful game. So have fun. That's the number one thing, because I lived it. When the fun was starting to slip away, I could have grinded that last year and really hated the game so much that I would probably have walked away and says, I'm not ever watching another hockey game. I left at the right time because I still had the love of the game, but I didn't have the fun anymore. I needed to bring the fun in some other way.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Anybody out there watching and stuff. I want to thank our sponsors one more time before we head out. I want to thank Matt Grabsky at Joey's 307. Fantastic. I want to thank the Pappas family at Geddes Bakery, Carmen Gina over at Bossone's in Utica, John Randazzo over at Capri and Oriskany, and Premier Landscaping with Mike and Austin Smith out in Oriskany. Thank you guys for being a sponsor of today's show. We really appreciate it. And Marty, great to talk with you, man. It was super. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up again. Sometime we'll have to get out to Buffalo and catch a game, Ryan.
Or maybe I'll make it down to Utica to a
Comets game or a Crunch game.
Yeah, well, don't get me started on the Syracuse Crunch. back in the days, they had Matt Cook, and Matt Cook and I did not love each other very much. So,
That's
yeah.
right.
The Syracuse Crunch, I don't want to get started on them.
Yeah, that's
All
right.
right, we'll come to Utica when we're going against the Crunch, so we could.
Okay, yeah, I'll do
against
that.
them.
I'll do that.
That could be good. Hopefully we get hockey back for the next year and
Yes.
everything else. But if you decide to come up, man, let us know. We'll definitely hook up some tickets and stuff, and we'll catch a game and take you out for some good upstate New York food.
Love it. Absolutely. I will not miss that opportunity if I'm up in God's country, as my buddy
There you
Robert
go.
Esch
That's
says.
right.
All right. Well, Marty, good talking with you today. Ryan, always good talking with you guys. Great show today. Look for us Thursday night. We're going to be with country singer Tom Nitty. Will be joining us. Fantastic singer, just won a great award here in Utica. So we're looking forward to talking with him. But you guys enjoy the rest of the day. Marty, stay safe, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, guys. Take care.